Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to Friday Night Mike. Not sure why I got my earbuds in. I can take those out right now. Can I take those out right now? Right now. I'm going to leave those in for right now because I'm not sure what the volume's like. Like if I take them out and they're still connected, then you don't hear me because the ear... Anyway, I'm going to leave them on. I'm going to leave the earbuds on. It's been one of those crazy weeks. I'm still catching up with everything that's happened this week. I feel like I say this every week. And it's true. It's amazing how many people have reached out and said, "Hey, Mike, so how have things been since there isn't any football?" I'm like, no. There is football. There has been football. It has been ridiculous trying to keep up with football, whether it's been the Big Ten and their drama, whether it's the Pac-12, falling into the Pacific Ocean. Did anybody even notice that? No, because the Pac-12 has been gone for a while. The Oregon Ducks were their last hope, and Auburn squashed them at the beginning of last year. And he said, "Oh, what the heck with all the Pac-12 is good for apparently is quarterbacks." Quick little stat here because I'm going to get into the show and I'm going to talk about a lot of things. I'm going to talk a lot more about JT Daniels later, but on the front end of my talk, great stat for you. JT Daniels played in this league called the Trinity League, and the Trinity League has 4 quarterbacks, 6 teams. 6 private school teams in Southern California and Orange County, and there are 4 quarterbacks from that league in the SEC right now. That's how heavy that league really is in quarterback play. So anyway, just had to get that stat out there. Still no Mason. Mason is gone. So no Bulldog for me. No Ugga. Did you see that story this week? That Ugga is not going to be allowed on the sideline of the Georgia football games? I mean, I got a problem with this. I mean, why can't the dog be in the doghouse on a sideline? I mean, can somebody tell me, is it really a concern? Is somebody really going to get COVID-19 from Ugga being on the sideline? Can we have just a smidgen of common sense here? I understand why you don't have Bevo, the Texas Longhorn, on the sideline with his 12 handlers who apparently can't handle him anyway because he tried to kill Ugga 2 years ago. Not that Ugga backed down. He was like, "What the hell? Step off." And it's like, no, Ugga, this thing is like 30 times, actually, how many times bigger? If I'm not even going to try and do the math, but if it's 2 tons, is a ton 1,000 pounds? And the dog is 40 pounds? So 5 would be 250 times bigger than Ugga. That's really rough math. Somebody out there can figure out how many times bigger Bevo is than Ugga. My sports writer math is going to put it at 50 pounds, 50 times bigger. I'm going to say 50 times bigger. So no Ugga on the sidelines. And I saw that story earlier this week. Chip Towers wrote it. And I was really bummed out because that's like a part of Georgia. That's like a part of the scene. That's a part of Sanford Stadium. That'd be like without the hedges. I mean, this is a part of the tradition, and so no Ugga. So I was kind of bummed out about that. No Cade Mays between the hedges this year. So this is not a story. This is the story. This story will not go away. Cade Mays' Tennessee story will not go away. I'm not so sure what is so hard to figure out about this. If you transfer within a conference, you have to sit out a season. If you transfer within the SEC, you got the NCAA that has to give you a waiver. The SEC also has to give you a waiver. They've said no to Cade Mays more than once. And they keep throwing press releases out there. Now they're trying to get the congressman involved. Today, Jeremy Pruitt flipped over a new leaf. And he said, "You know what? It's really not about Cade Mays. It's about these kids. It's about what's great for all of college football." I'm kind of like, come on, man. I mean, now Jeremy's got a point. It's a COVID-19 year. It's a tough year. All these families are stressed out. It's very difficult. I get it. I understand. But rules are rules. And bullying and going public and putting this on Twitter and having a petition, that's not how you're going to get your way with the SEC. It's almost like Tennessee's trying to, I don't know, like like out the SEC, like we're going to name you, we're going to talk about you, we're going to shame you. And do we think that if you back the SEC into a corner, they're going to cave in? I don't know, maybe. Doesn't seem like it, but now they're saying, hey, everybody should be eligible because that's just the way it is. I see some of you doing the share thing. Thank you. I need to do the share thing right now. So if you'll give me a minute to share this. This is part of the routine. I appreciate the regulars. You guys are like, yeah, Mike, can't you share? I can't share it until the broadcast starts. And I don't want to start the broadcast by just sitting here, not saying anything, looking at my computer sharing. So I try to get into the program a little bit. There's no formal opening monologue. It's just me talking about the things that I think are the most important or the most interesting at the start of the show. And then I go, you know what, let me take a breath and let me share this to my page. Talking college football on a Friday night. How's that for a headline? Gripping. You would have to click if you didn't know what was being said, right? Probably not. And I'll share it. I'll share it on this page as well, so you all can help as we talk college football. And because a lot happened this week, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and as a journalist, that bothers me, right? I mean, I'm a big believer, and you guys know I tell you on the show every week. Listen, I want everybody to have your own opinion. You get your own right to your opinion, your own perspective. But sometimes, like, I think I know more, and I'm like, you know, I'm reading these people that are writing stuff on message boards, and I'm saying, where are they coming up with this? Who's putting this bad information out? I don't understand it. Me personally, and I could be wrong, I don't know, 2 weeks from now, I might come back and say, wow, was I shocked? But, you know, there's not a controversy at Georgia. That quarterback room is working together right now. You've got 4 quarterbacks that are on the same page. And it seems to me, reading what fans write, some fans write, not all of you, but it seems to me people want to divide this and they want to turn this into this bloodthirsty. That's not what's happening. Dwan Mathis and JT Daniels and Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett, these guys are working together right now, right? So I don't understand the whole controversy thing, and I always try to, you know, flush that because I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's good for the fan base when the fan base gets divided. We've talked about that on the show. So, you know, we can talk about it later, but, you know, my thought on it right now is JT Daniels, Dwan Mathis, Carson Beck, Stetson Bennett, and I don't see it another way right now. I just don't. I know that JT hasn't been cleared yet, but he's scrimmaging, he's practicing, and I still think he's the guy that you'll see on the field first. Now, I think you'll see the other quarterbacks because they're going to need all 3 quarterbacks to get through a 10-game season. But I don't think it's, oh my gosh, this guy's beating out this guy, and these guys are arguing. I heard this guy said this. That stuff is just is garbage. There was a story that came out Monday. There were a lot of people that thought that Jake Fromm was going to get cut from the Buffalo Bills and not make the Buffalo Bills 53-man roster. And there were reports, Jake wasn't looking good, Jake wasn't doing this, Jake wasn't doing that. And everybody knows that Jake has had a tough start in the NFL. Jake had a very well-publicized text message to a friend that was inappropriate, that was racially insensitive, that he had sent over a year ago. And Jake Fromm was a guy that really had to have his come to Jesus, look in the mirror, who am I moment, and own it. And he did. He did own it. And he's in that Buffalo Bills locker room trying to make that club and trying to show people that, hey, that was a stupid mistake. Well, that part of Jake got crossed over with what people thought of his football abilities. And I'm amazed at how many Georgia fans now talk about Jake Fromm like he was a horrible quarterback. He was not a horrible quarterback. Jake Fromm was ranked 5th in the nation in pass efficiency. Jake Fromm won a lot of football games, right? Jake Fromm doesn't have a golden arm. Jake Fromm doesn't run a 4.5 40. But Jake Fromm can fly the jet. And if you haven't read that story, you need to read the story about why Jake Fromm made the Buffalo Bills. And the reason why he made the Buffalo Bills is because he moved the team on the field. What do we mean by that? Put him under center, and what does the team do? Don't worry about Jake Fromm, right? Don't worry about Jake's stats. Don't worry about his arm strength. Don't worry about how fast he runs. Does he complete passes? Does the team move down the field when he is on the field? And the answer is yes. And that's why Jake Fromm made the Buffalo Bills, because he can play a pro-style offense. Pro-style offense means making the right read, means getting your guys in the right protections, means getting through your progressions and finding the open receiver. Doesn't mean you're the most talented guy, because that wasn't the case with Justin Fields. Justin was much more talented, but who was the better quarterback? Who was the guy that could organize the team and move the team? It was the guy that had a year's worth of experience, not the brand new freshman that had never played. Well, the same thing's going on right now. JT Daniels has played in a pro-style system for years. So he can do all these things. He can read the defense. He can set the protection. He can get rid of the ball. He's not going to turn it over. He's not going to be as prone to a turnover because he's got game experience and he's played at the college level speed. You've got to give Dwan and Carson time to get accustomed to a college offense and college speed. You don't just plug him in and go, yep, he's going to go. That's not how it works at quarterback, and especially not how it works in an air raid offense. An air raid offense is predicated on balance. Not run pass, not we're going to run it half the time and pass it half the time. No, the balance of there's 5 different guys you can throw to. Let's try to spread it out among those 5 guys so the defense can't just cover one guy. You want to double cover George Pickens? They're going to find the second or the third option open. They're going to find the matchup before the ball snapped. The quarterback is going to have an idea based on what he sees, where he's going with the ball, and where the highest percentage throw is. That is a pro-style offense. That is why Jake Fromm is in the NFL. That is why JT Daniels has the lead for the Georgia quarterback job. If Dwan Mathis learns pro-style offense, he will be a first-round draft pick. If Dwan Mathis learns the pro-style offense, he will be a first-round NFL draft pick. Okay? But right now, Dwan's learning that. Dwan didn't have the benefit of the spring, and neither did Jamie Newman. For all those people out there that wondered, Jamie didn't get to go through spring football. So I know that there's people they're gonna say what they want to say. They're gonna believe what they want to say, believe what they want to believe. But that's the evidence. Those are the facts. All right. NFL teams don't pick a guy for the heck of it, and they sure don't keep him on the roster if he can't play. If you make an NFL roster as a quarterback, you're a good quarterback. There's no such thing as a bad NFL quarterback. All right, let's just be very clear about that. So I wanted to cover that ground and recommend people read the Fly the Jet story. You're going to want to understand what that means as far as the difference in offenses, flying a jet versus flying a helicopter versus flying a single-engine plane. There's a lot of different offenses. Jeff Horton with a great point. Willingham, I'm sorry, it's not coach talk. This is football talk, and hopefully you tune in. And if you watch it every week, hopefully you'll get it. JT was winning the job, and Jamie Newman saw that, and that's why he left. Because why stick around amid COVID-19 if you're not going to be the starting quarterback, or if you're going to have to compete throughout the season? That doesn't help your draft stock if you're not on the field. Okay, that's why you leave. And if you're Georgia, you don't sign JT in May if you think that you're confident Jamie Newman's your guy. That was the real red flag. So I feel like I have to keep going over that because some people don't get that. Like they're like, well, wait a minute. And it's like, okay, well, I'll explain it to you again and again until you get the logic and the rationale behind it. The question, and I don't know, maybe some of you saw this, JT was projected as a first-round draft pick by CBS Sports this week. Look, I don't know. Jamie Newman was projected as a first-round draft pick when the draft grades that I saw in Jamie Newman were all 4th and 5th round, which is why Jamie Newman was at Georgia to begin with. Because if Jamie Newman was a first-round draft pick, he would have gone pro already. Did anybody ever think about that? No, because Jamie Newman needed to show he could play in a pro-style offense. That's why he left Wake Forest for Georgia and not Wake Forest for the NFL, because he wasn't going to be a first-round pick. So now Jamie Newman's gone. He's going to go work out with the quarterback coach. He's going to get 2 weeks at the Senior Bowl. I think he'll do well. I think there'll be a team that looks at Jamie and his skills and says, you know what, I like him. We're going to draft him. I think Jamie could still go end of first round, second round, if he has some great workouts. He's got 3 months to spend with a quarterback coach, and that can do wonders, but he's not going to have the game film. Might have a little practice film, but he's not going to have the game film. Okay? JT is going to have the game film. And right now, JT is projected as a first rounder. I don't know about that. I think he's got first round potential, but I've got a question about his knee. He's still not cleared with the knee. He's still not 100%. He's mobile enough to scrimmage and he's mobile enough to practice, but they're not getting hit. If that knee isn't ready for Arkansas, then it's got to be Dwan or it's got to be Carson or it's got to be both, right? So what would that offense look like? Well, it couldn't be the pro style they're running now. They would have to simplify things because you're talking about freshmen. Carson Beck is a true freshman in college who really should have been in high school this spring. He was an early enrollee. You can't ask Carson to go from high school to college with what, 3 or 4 weeks of practice because he had no spring? Or Dwan for that matter, because even though Dwan was on the team, Dwan wasn't in the offense. He was running scout team, right? And he didn't have the benefit of the spring. So you've got two really young guys. And as for JT Stock, I'm just not sure what he's going to do physically in the knee. If you've got a bad knee, you go to the combine, one of the most important things that happens, it's not the 40, it's not the bench press, it's not when you throw and Kurt Warner breaks it down, it's when you go do your medical. And all those teams have a chance to pull on you and twist your leg and twist your arms and find out if you're banged up, you're beat up, you're hurt. That physical is the most important thing that happens for those players at the NFL Combine. The scouts and the coaches, they've already got some preconceived notions about what you can do as a football player. They've been watching your career the last 2 years. They've come to see you practice. They've come to your pro day. Most of them have seen you in the Senior Bowl, if not the East-West Shrine game. They've talked to your coaches. They've talked to the coaches on other teams. They've talked to the players. They've talked to your teammates. They know who you are before they get there. What they don't know is, do you say ouch when they twist your ankle like this? And they're going to twist your ankle like this, and they're going to pull on it, and they're going to make you bend your back, and they're going to do everything they possibly can to find out if there's an injury that has not already been diagnosed by your program. And some guys have their draft stock slip tremendously, and you go, what happened there? Failed the physical, failed a drug test, right? Something happened. So my question with this Georgia team, whether it's JT Daniels, whether it's Dwan Mathis, whether it's Carson Beck, even Stetson Bennett, that is not my biggest question, is not the quarterback position. My biggest question, folks, is the receiver position. There is no more dependent position in sports than the quarterback. Maybe a basketball point guard, maybe. Because a basketball point guard can make a great pass, and if the guy doesn't make the shot, he doesn't get an assist. But in basketball, it's about scoring. It's not about the assist. I can't think of a position that's more dependent on the others around them to make them look good or make them look bad than the quarterback position. And I thought last year those receivers made Jake Fromm look bad at times. They made him look great at Florida, right? What was Georgia, 12 out of 18 on third downs? I think Jake was something like 20 for 30, tore Florida up. I think what he had, 40 points on Tennessee. There were times they played well, but there were games like South Carolina. Receiver turns the wrong way on an option route. Jake thinks he's cutting out. The guy cuts in. It's an interception. Throws another pass, hits a receiver in the hands. Overtime, goes off the receiver's hands into somebody else. End of the day, you look at the box score. Oh my gosh, Jake Fromm's got 3 interceptions. Yeah, 2 of them weren't his fault. The other one, he's trying to throw it out of bounds, and a future first-round corner makes a great play on it. That happens sometimes. How are these guys going to make JT Daniels and Dwan Mathis and Carson Beck look? Well, I think George Pickens could make me look good. George Pickens is about as talented of a wide receiver as I've ever been around. I mean, like, ever been around. George Pickens is an amazing wide receiver. Is he going to have the discipline to start and finish every game, right? And how well does he know the playbook? I don't know this. I don't know this because I have only seen a very short part of scrimmage. How is George Pickens going to do in the new offense with the new terminology and the new routes? Remember last year, George didn't have a catch. In 2 out of the first 4 games, George Pickens didn't have a catch last year. I think he'll be quicker. I think he's picking this up. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be double covered. But who's your number 2? I'm hearing Matt Landers is having a great fall. If Matt Landers can be everything that he looks like he should be, then Georgia is going to be in great shape. Because Matt Landers is statuesque. I mean, Matt Landers, you look up wide receiver in the dictionary, and there's a picture of Matt Landers. But he's got to catch the ball. He's got to be consistent, right? I think George Pickens' presence has been great for Matt Landers. I think he's going to elevate his game, and Matt Landers is going to be one of my surprise players. I like Jermaine Burton in the slot. I like this guy. He's fast. He's athletic. I think Jermaine Burton has a chance to be the next great receiver after George Pickens. We'll see how much he emerges this year. I kind of felt like Dominic Blaylock and George set the standard last year. Don't know that we're going to see a 47-catch season out of Jermaine, but I do think he's talented. I think he's given Demetrius Robertson all he wants for competition. And Karis Jackson, what a leader, right? You want to talk about somebody that's on it, that's on the spot, that's doing what he's supposed to do and earning the praise. Karis Jackson, another potential breakout guy. And if you remember, Karis was starting last year in the opening game when he broke his hand against Vanderbilt. So Karis Jackson, Matt Landers, Jermaine Burton, I mean, these are the buzz names. Bad news this week. Bad news earlier this week, and UGA Sports had it first. Trey McKinney, knee surgery, right? So now Trey probably, I'm going to say doubtful for the opener. Arthroscopic knee surgery is typical of 3 to 5 week recovery time. You hope you get McKinney back in time for Auburn, or certainly Tennessee, definitely Alabama. I think Trey McKinney has a chance to be a difference maker. I look at George Pickens as a future NFL player. I haven't seen enough proof out of anybody else in that core to know that they're a future NFL player. I'm not saying they can't be. I'm just saying I'm not convinced and I haven't seen enough proof. Does Jermaine Burton have that ceiling? Probably. Could Matt Landers, if he puts it together? Probably. But if you were asking me if I would bet money on George guys being NFL players in that receiving core, George Pickens is the only one I put money on right now. I like what Justin Robinson doing, the freshman. But again, right now, that's the only. Trey McKinney is an NFL tight end. Trey McKinney is an NFL tight end. He's better than what you've had in a while. I think Trey McKinney has a chance to be even a notch higher than Isaac Nauta. And I liked Isaac a lot. Now, Isaac bombed the combine. He didn't run well. He sunk to the 7th round of the draft. He's a consummate pro, though. Isaac made the Lions last year. He was on the practice squad. He got pulled up. He's back on the practice squad. Isaac Nauta is a pro. Isaac Nauta delivered at Georgia when the plays came his way in the clutch. But Trey McKinney is a next-level guy, all right? I don't know if he's a starter in the NFL, but I think Trey McKinney is next level. Somebody's asking me about Tommy Bush. You know, big mystery for me. I don't know because Tommy was injured last year, and the year before he wasn't physically ready to play college football. And Kirby even said that. If you can't play special teams, you can't get on the bus. And Tommy Bush was just kind of tall and lanky as a true. And then last year, the hernia surgery, you know, he had great workout film this offseason. But what is he really doing right now? I don't know. I'm not hearing enough. Maybe he'll be a surprise. Maybe he'll emerge as the season goes on. But, you know, Tommy hasn't played in a few years when you think about it. 6'5", former Under Armour All-American. Certainly a guy to keep your eye on. But McKinney's an X factor. Darnell Washington is a true freshman. I don't know how much we can expect of a true freshman at the tight end position. There's a lot to know at the tight end position. Georgia has typically asked a lot of their tight ends, whether it's to block, run routes, catch the ball. Washington is a guy that I'd heard so much about in the offseason, came in 10 pounds heavy. Now, he had a knee procedure as well, a scope as well, and that may be why. But if a guy's working to burn off those 10 pounds, he's not going to be as sharp as the guy that hits the ground running in shape. So Darnell Washington, I've got my questions about Darnell Washington. To me, the catalyst in the group, and I haven't even brought him up yet, the straw that's going to stir the drink is going to be James Cook. James Cook is the guy. Like, if you're playing a video game and you're going to be a guy, you want to be James Cook in this offense. The star lights up under your feet, and when the ball snaps, you carry out the James Cook assignment. Because this offense, I believe, is going to go through James Cook a lot. Now, I think Zamir White's going to be the starting tailback. I think he's going to run the ball between the tackles. I know Zamir's worked very hard. Huge fan favorite, huge team favorite. Locker room loves him. Works hard, good leader. Wants to make something of himself. Not sure he was built for this offense, but he'll have a role in it, and he will benefit from it. Zamir White will benefit from learning how to catch balls out of the backfield because that's what today's NFL is. You got to have a running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Y'all know that. You play fantasy football, right? You know the value of the guys that can catch the ball as well as they run it. James Cook is that guy. And James told us on a Zoom call earlier this week, I didn't know this, but James's senior year, he lined up a lot at receiver. He knew he had a scholarship to Georgia, So he gave up his carries in the backfield to some of his younger teammates, and he would play receiver. So when he was lining up in the slot at Georgia, that wasn't his first time. James Cook has receiver skills, and I think this is his contract year at Georgia. I think James Cook is gone after this year. Unless there's an injury or some unforeseen event, I think James Cook is going to be gone, and I think people will talk about him like they talked about Alvin Kamara. And I covered Alvin at Tennessee, and he was a talented guy. Alvin's taking it up another notch in the NFL. James Cook could be that guy. We know his older brother Dalvin is already there and does a wonderful job. So earlier today, there was the Georgia Fall Athletics Board meeting, and they do it over Zoom. And I was listening in and watching this for 2 hours, and it was very boring. It was very boring. It was boring because it was just so procedural. And now this person's going to talk. And it was a presentation. It was like somebody was giving a book report. And the thing of it is, I mean, Georgia, their administration does a great job. The fact that Georgia has over $100 million in their reserve fund is amazing. And it's why Georgia's not freaking out and cutting programs and cutting jobs, and why that $80 million football building continues to be built. Learned today 35,000 man-hours have gone into this football building, not one accident yet. And they haven't been delayed. Still on target to be completed in spring of 2021. So they're doing some great things over there. And Greg McGarity talked about the budget. He said there's going to be a $55 million shortfall in the budget. And why? Because you're only going to have 20 to 25,000 people buying tickets. That's part of the reason why. There's revenue that comes from your seats. The other half comes from your season ticket holders. What we learned today is that 54% of the season ticket holders have opted out. They've said, you know what? I'm going to sit this one out. Now, the bad news is that that's half your season ticket holders that aren't in. The good news is you only had 20 to 25,000 seats to offer, and had everybody stayed in, there'd been season ticket holders who wouldn't have got tickets to games, and they probably would have been really upset about that. So that's the good news. Bad news of that came out of that today. 54% opt out. $55 million budget shortfall. Now that can change. If something changes with the attendance model and we're halfway through the season, they say, you know what? Instead of 20 to 25,000, now you can have 45 to 60,000, right? There's some really scary looking insect on my porch, and as long as he doesn't bother me, I'm not going to bother him. And it's not, before anybody said it, it's not a cicada, and it's not a cicada killer. I thought I had what were those Japanese hornets? I thought I saw a Japanese hornet in the neighborhood. There's an Asian hornet. Man, I hope I don't offend anybody. Whatever that hornet is from Asia that was supposed to be over here that could kill everything. I thought I had that, and it turned out to be a cicada killer. And I didn't even know there was such a thing. This thing was carrying a cicada through midair. That's not what this bug is, but it's scary. So, tailgating. They said they don't know yet if there's going to be tailgating on the Georgia football campus. They're not sure of that yet. McGarity said they're going to wait and see. He said, you don't want to do anything to endanger people, but at the same time, you want to get as close back to normal as possible. What my hope is, and I think they've said this too, is you hope that as the year goes on, certainly soon, that the COVID-19 numbers in Athens, Clark County go down, because right now it's one of the top 20 hottest counties in the country, and that's not good, folks. That's scary, right? So mask up, socially distant. But thank goodness Georgia doesn't open the season at home until October. There's another month yet before Georgia's home opener. Well, not quite a month, October 3rd. There's 3 more weeks, I suppose. Yeah. So there's some time for that trend to go down, and you hope that's what happens at Georgia, that the trend of COVID-19 positives go down, so that we can start looking at increased attendance, so that we can start looking at the possibility of a tailgate. What else we got here? Deandre Baker. Did you see this? Deandre Baker got released by the New York Giants. A lot of stories out there, a lot of testimony. I don't know exactly what happened, but what I do know is that the Giants and the NFL did their investigations, and right now Deandre Baker is facing 4 charges of armed robbery in Broward County, Florida, and he's been released from the Giants. It's a sad story. It's a guy that had a $9 million signing bonus, a first-round pick, and now he's out of the NFL. And it's a cautionary tale. You never really make it enough to the point where you can, you got to be smart who you hang around with. It's not a good look for Georgia. But more importantly, you just hope that Deandre can get things back on track. So I've done a lot of talking. I've gone down the line. I see there's people that don't agree with me. That's not a shocker. As I've said, that's okay. Explain why you don't agree. We can have a good discussion. Always interested to hear, why somebody might think that a true freshman can beat out a guy who's played college football for 2 years on the West Coast. I'm always interested to get different opinions and just see kind of what different people think on different things. That's just kind of my thought. I wanted to make sure I came at you guys tonight with everything. McCole Hardman, kind of disappointed. I was hoping McCole would have a big night for the Chiefs the other night. Didn't do a whole lot. Saw him in the game. That looks like an offense where every week Andy Reid is going to kind of decide, like, okay, who is our best matchup? Pro-style offense. Going to find out where is our best matchup. Last night, Sammy Watkins had the matchup they like. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I didn't think he looked that good at LSU, as good as he looked last night. I thought he looked better last night than he looked I was impressed last night. I didn't see that in him at LSU. And maybe I was just asleep at the wheel, or maybe the Georgia run defense was that good. But I didn't think he was all that, what I saw last night with his NFL performance. So that looked pretty good. James Crump said the only playmaker we started under Smart is Eason, because Eason could put the team on his back and carry you. How many wins did Eason carry you to in 2016? I seem to remember covering the Tennessee-Georgia game. I think you just kind of answered the question there, James. I mean, you don't want a quarterback that can carry you. You want a quarterback that can use all your weapons, right? You want a quarterback that can distribute the ball to your playmakers. If you got a quarterback and it's all on him, what happens when he has a bad day? So I think that's why he moved on. Bernard points out that was the Texans' defense. Well, it was, but I'll say this, the Texans' defense also stoned Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the goal line. And how do I know this? Because I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire on both of my fantasy football teams. And I was kind of upset. Because I'm like, dude, you got 3 carries inside the 5-yard line. You got to score. He looked good down the field in an open field, but if he's not going to be their goal line back, I'm not sure he was worth first-round pick. Why did he leave the West Coast? Why did JT Daniels? He was beat out by a 3-star, Marcenio says. Well, here's what happened, Marcenio. JT won the starting job for the 2019 season, and in the second quarter, he suffered a torn ACL in the second quarter of that game. And so when you tear your ACL, that's a season-ending injury. Keaton Slovis came in, a freshman, and had a tremendous year for USC, a great year. And Keaton Slovis built a good relationship with the head coach. And the Daniels family decided that rather than compete against the guy who just had this great season, they would go somewhere else where they thought they could win the job and where they thought they could play for another NFL coordinator who would run the air raid offense and have a lot of talent around him. And they picked Georgia. And conversely, Todd Monken picked him. So he liked Georgia. Georgia liked him. And so he came because he felt like he could beat out Jamie Newman. And he started to do that, so Jamie Newman left. So why did he leave the West Coast? Because he suffered a knee injury in the first half of the first game, and the guy that came in did a great job. And JT said, rather than fight it out with this guy, I'll go somewhere else that has a better situation than USC. I mean, don't you think that Georgia's a better situation than USC? I'm looking at it right now. I think it's a better situation. You know why? Because USC's not even playing football. So who's the smart one here? I think JT Daniels and his family made a good decision. I'm not so sure, why that's confusing anybody. Who's trashing anybody? T.O. Willingham wants to know, is that trashing a player? I'm missing part of the conversation here. I see you guys have a good conversation here going. You're saying he's a 2.0 Jake. So Jermaine Dunbar. So Jermaine, are you predicting that JT Daniels is going to lead Georgia to the national championship game this year? Jermaine, I think that's too much. Now Jake did it as a freshman, and even though JT has more experience, I don't think you can say he's going to match what Jake did because he doesn't have Nick Chubb and Sony Michel in the backfield. Part of the reason why Jake got Georgia the national championship game as a true freshman was he had 2 of the best running backs in the country, and Georgia played to their strength. And they had a pretty good receiving corps, too. A better receiving corps than I think they do right now in terms of the experience, right? Do I think that he'll be like Jake Fromm and make an NFL team? Probably. Is he like Jake in the fact that he runs a pro-style offense and he can avoid sacks by calling the right protections and only throw maybe interceptions in 2 out of 12 games? Do I think that JT's only going to throw picks in 2 out of 12 games like Jake did? I don't know. Do I think that he'll beat Florida by completing 67% of his passes or put 40 points on Tennessee? I'm not sure about that. If they have a torrential downpour, I don't know how well he throws in the rain or cold. Jake couldn't do that very well. So he probably can't either because it's not very cold or windy out in Southern California. So I don't know. If Jermaine thinks that JT is going to lead Georgia to the national title game this year, I guess that's his opinion. I think that's a lot. If Mathis beats out Daniels, did Daniels make the right decision? Well, no, absolutely not. If he comes to a school when he could have gone anywhere, Michigan wanted him. They're not playing football. Tennessee was wanting him. LSU was wanting him. Washington was wanting him. If JT picked Georgia and gets beat out by a redshirt freshman with no college experience, then I'd say he made the wrong decision. I'd also say that would mean he's not a very good quarterback because it's going to be hard for any true freshman or redshirt freshman who hasn't played at the college level to beat out somebody that has played an entire season and was in a program for an entire year. So to answer your question, no, it wouldn't be a good decision. So Dayton, now they're talking about his USC career. Yeah, that USC team went 6-5. They didn't do real well, and you might have not been listening earlier, but it has to do with the guys that are around you, and it also has to do with your scheme. Now, that season, I think USC and T. Martin might have split I think T quit calling the plays about halfway through. They kind of had a messy divorce between the head coach and the offensive coordinator halfway through the season, and their offense was kind of a mess, for lack of a better word. You know, I thought at times last year Georgia sputtered. I didn't put it on Jake so much as I put it on the receivers. And as Kirby Smart said, the musical chairs at receivers, having different guys out there every week and not knowing what you were going to get from a consistency standpoint. Guys running routes at the wrong depth and things like that, or dropping passes. Tyler Simmons dropping what would have been a touchdown pass on the first play of the SEC championship game. And then Jake played bad in the inclement weather. You know, he couldn't control where the ball was going against Kentucky. I think he only threw the ball twice in the second half of that game. Of course, Kentucky's quarterback didn't throw it that well either, but you know, when you're a Georgia fan and you want to hate on your own players, you look at the circumstances that support your argument instead of trying to look at the whole picture and realize that you had a pretty good quarterback the last 3 years who's now in the NFL. Calling him trash now is just silly, all right? Now, could you say there was more talented quarterbacks out there? Absolutely. But to degrade a guy that won a lot of football games for you, that just seems silly. I've seen this before, though. You know, I've seen fan bases before. I haven't seen it as much at Georgia as I've seen it other places. Georgia's pretty good about respecting the former players and coaches. Like when I had Mark Richt on the show this summer, or I had Jim Donnan on, or I had Ray Goff on, those coaches didn't win a national championship. And at the time, there were a lot of Georgia fans that were upset about it. But in hindsight, now that Ray Goff is moved on, and now that Jim Donnan has moved on, and now that Mark Richt has moved on, most of the Georgia fans I talk to say, we appreciated their efforts. We know that they came here, they did their best, won a lot of games. You probably all have a lot of great memories of Georgia football over the last 40 years. And you probably don't say a lot of mean things about these guys any longer. That's not the case at other places. There's other places when a coach leaves, he was the worst coach ever. All they can do is talk about how bad he was. They want to blame him for everything. And I think you guys know who it is. You know, first it was Lane Kiffin, and then it was Derek Dooley, and now it's Butch Jones' fault. And it's just, you know, when they're there, they're the coach for life, you know, Val for life, and then they leave and they're the worst guy ever. And I just go, that is just so uncouth. It's just, you know, is bogue still a word? It's bogue. I think it's still a word. That's just like, why? Why do you want to? This person is a part of your tradition. This person is a part of your legacy. You know, why do you want to be ugly about players that played for your program? Why? And even more crazy is when people are ugly about guys that are over there right now. This guy's not any good. He's on your team. Why do you have to be ugly? I mean, somebody's got to explain this phenomenon to me. You can have your favorite player But that doesn't mean that you got to criticize the other people around him. It's like, so your favorite player looks better. Because what you see is a fan hating on his own guys. Like, I don't understand that. Now, I understand being conflicted on NFL Sundays because we play fantasy football and you got this guy on this team and this guy on this team. And so you might root and say, oh, no, don't throw it to him on this play. Throw it to my guy. I get that kind of conflict, but I don't understand when I read message boards and people are talking about their own players, and saying, oh, he's Jake Fromm 2.0. Week on. Jake Fromm won a lot of games. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest. If I told you right now that your next quarterback was going to win 3 straight SEC East Division championships, was going to beat Tennessee the next 3 times, was going to beat Florida the next 3 times, was going to beat Auburn 3 in a row, was going to win a college football playoff game, and put you in a position where the other team has a 2nd and 26 and you can hold them, and you win the national title, would you take that? I think you probably would. What if I said he'd put up, 28 points in an SEC title game and throw for over 300 yards? Would you take that? You probably would. So, when you start talking about how bad Jake Fromm was, that's called revisionist history. And it's not true, and the numbers are right there in black and white. Now, you don't have to like who Jake Fromm is. The guy made a really stupid mistake. And you don't have to say that he's more talented than Justin Fields, because he's not. I could stand there at practice and watch Justin. I could hear music playing when Justin threw the football. Talk about a beautiful spiral. Talk about a great athlete. But when it came time to play 11-on-11 football, who moved the team? Who understood the offense? Was it the guy that had played an entire season, or was it the true freshman? Well, come on. Now, had Justin stuck around, it would have been really interesting. The competition would have been great. But just like JT Daniels left Southern Cal, Justin Fields left Georgia for a better opportunity. And he made the most of it. And he led Ohio State to the playoffs. And good for Justin Fields. So there's no controversy. There's no controversy. Justin made a good decision and went to a great program. Ohio State is just full of tradition. It's got a great game day. I've been to the Shoe. They're the preeminent program in the Big Ten. I compare Ohio State to Georgia. And some people got upset when I did this. I was doing, I covered Big Ten for 4 years up there, and went to every Big Ten stadium in those 4 years and covered all those teams. And I was kind of doing like this program compares to this program. And I compared Michigan to Alabama, and a lot of people got upset because Michigan hasn't won national titles and Alabama has. Well, from a personality standpoint, they're similar, because Alabama has to share their state with Auburn, and Michigan has to share its state with Michigan State. They both have traditions. They both have very identifiable logos that you could buy in any Foot Locker across the country. You can find the Block M or the Cursive A. And they're both known as traditional powerhouses. Ohio State is like Georgia because, like Georgia, Ohio State kind of owns their own state. There's really not another school in the state of Ohio that competes with Ohio State. I mean, you can say Ohio University, but they're in the Mid-American Conference. You can say Cincinnati, and they're in the American Athletic Conference. There's really no other school that you point to and go, yep, Ohio State and it's kind of like that for Georgia. There's really nobody else in Georgia that competes with Georgia. The other thing those states have in common is there's so much great high school football in the state of Ohio as well as Georgia that if you could literally make your living recruiting in state. And Ohio does that. They get the pick of all the guys they want. And Georgia pretty much gets the pick of the guys they want in Georgia. Doesn't mean they're going to get everybody. Atlanta's a tough town to recruit. We know this. But Georgia pretty much gets who they want out of Georgia. Kirby does, particularly when he identifies them early enough. So that's why the personalities are similar. And, yeah, so that's kind of that discussion. What else do you guys got for me here? Looks like some people are talking about Brock Vandergrift's high school game tonight. Jermaine Dunbar says he never had a chance. He did have a chance. He left on his own accord. He absolutely had. No, Kirby wanted to keep him. Or do we got to go back down the road, Jermaine? I don't mind explaining it to you. Justin had said he wanted to transfer before the Sugar Bowl, and yet he still wanted to go on that Sugar Bowl trip, and Kirby took him, even though he knew that Justin and Luke Ford were probably going to transfer. He brought those guys on the trip, hoping that he could talk him out of it. and even told him you can come back at any time. So the reason I explain it is because I don't like revisionist history. I don't like people coming on a timeline and spouting a narrative that's not true. Because then other people get misled and go, oh my gosh, did that happen? And it's like, no, that didn't happen. He left because he wanted to leave. That's okay. I'm missing a great high school game, it sounds like. It had nothing to do with Fromm being respected. It had to do with Fromm running the offense well, James. When you're in a position to win a championship, you don't change your quarterback. And Jake had a bad game against LSU his second year, and he came back and he absolutely tore up Florida. And then he won out. And then he played a really good game against Alabama. If you go back and look at the 2018 numbers, Jake had a great game in the SEC championship game. The defense not so much in the second half, and they got left out of the playoff. That's what happened. So we're talking about didn't allow Justin to play. Jermaine, he played in 12 out of the 14 games, and in a lot of those games, now he did really good. In fact, Justin was the freshman of the week against UConn. I think he was 5 of 8 passing, and he rushed for over 100 yards. I believe it was the UMass game, and he looked really good. But when you put Justin in against the SEC teams, he wasn't able to get through his progressions, and he had a tendency to tuck and run like a lot of freshmen do. Like a lot of young players who don't have experience. And, the catch-22 is, well, how do you get experience if you don't play? How do you play if you don't have experience? If Georgia had lost 3 or 4 games and you weren't playing for a national championship, maybe you play them a lot more. But the fact is you were playing for a national title every game in 2018 until you lost to Alabama. The national championship was within your grasp. So it wasn't like you could go, hey, Jake, we know you led us to a national championship game last year and you're playing really good, but we're going to pull you out. That's not how it works. And when you do, and they did in the fourth quarters, you're going to start the guy out. You're going to say, hey, go to the line, get the playoff on time, get your handoffs down, make some short passes, get some confidence, build yourself up into this offense to the point where you get comfortable and you get accustomed to the speed of the game. And that's what Georgia tried to do. And, Justin wasn't where he needed to be by the end of the year, and that's why Jake Fromm was still starting in the SEC championship game. So you can look at Alabama, and Nick Saban didn't put Tua in until the second half of the national championship game. I mean, my goodness, Auburn was beating Alabama by double digits, and Tua didn't play in that game for the same reason that Justin didn't play when you got Jake Fromm. You got a proven guy that's won a lot of games. You don't pull him out. So there's a narrative out there, and there's always people that are going to believe, that things would have just magically turned on the next opportunity. But the fact is there'd been one opportunity after another. And then there was also the practices that none of you saw that the coaches were able to evaluate. And there's an opportunity to prove yourself every day in practice. So I had somebody ask me the other day, when do you think Kirby's going to announce the starting quarterback for this season? I said he's not going to. And what do you mean he's not going to? I see he didn't in 2018. There was never a depth chart. There was never starting. He's not going to announce the starter this year. I don't think he's going to announce the starter. What good does announcing the starter do? Why tell Sam Pittman who the starter is going to be? You want to work Dwan and you want to work JT 50-50? Give these guys a chance to compete. You don't need to announce it now. Who knows? I mean, Dwan is picking up the offense. From what I'm hearing, Dwan's picking things up. He's starting to get a feel for this pro-style offense. And good things are happening. He's getting more consistent with his throws. We know he's got a big arm. We know he's got great mobility. But now can he get through the progressions and make the decision? He's learning, right? He's getting those 50-50 reps. And Kirby's going to play him when he can, just like he did Justin, because you want to have that second and third guy ready because you got a 10-game SEC season ahead. And there's a chance JT may not get through the year. He's already injured his knee once, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see when you play these guys, what you do with them once they're in the game, how many opportunities to pass, and when they get the opportunity to pass, do they go through their progressions or do they tuck and run? Now, tucking and running is making a play and getting another first down. So I've never had a problem with it. But your quarterback's coach and your offensive coordinator says, hey, if you stand in the pocket and wait just a little bit longer, somebody's going to come open. Trust your receivers, trust your progressions. And that's what's really hard when you've got these fabulous athletes playing quarterback, whether it's Carson Wentz or whether it's Deshaun Watson or whether it's Josh Dobbs. Because, when you've got that ability to take flight and you can make it, that's what you want to do. The people watching go, why'd they call it a running play? It wasn't a running play. It wasn't a running play. It was a pass play. They decided to run. And that happens a lot with a lot of young guys and inexperienced guys. I think we see Carson Beck might do that a little bit this year. You might see Dwan do that a little bit this year. I don't think you're going to see JT Daniels do that. You certainly didn't see Jake Fromm do that, because they would make the pre-snap read and they would have a pretty good idea already where to put the protection so they weren't often caught off guard by the blitz. As good as the Georgia offensive line was, the lack of sacks had more to do with Jake's pre-snap reads and the protections he was able to call and the checks and the audibles than it did the blanket line play. And I remember talking to the Senior Bowl executive director about that. He was a scout with the Patriots and the Seahawks, and that was a question with Isaiah Wilson. Isaiah Wilson is a pass blocker. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to watch Sunday and see how Isaiah does if he's the starting right tackle in pass protection. So a lot of fun things to talk about. A lot of people rehashed in the past tonight. And that's what we do. That's what we're here for. Our season is coming up. September 26th is fast approaching. Georgia's going to be at Arkansas in just a couple of weeks. I'm really excited about that. 10 o'clock hour is coming. You might want to watch out. I think Connor and Jeff might have some news from that Rabun County game with Brock Vandergriff. I know you all are tuned into that. Vandergriff, a commitment, a really talented kid from right down the road in Bogart. I wouldn't base too much on any high school game. Remember what I was saying earlier about quarterback being a dependent position? The same goes for high school players. And that's why quarterbacks oftentimes, they're not as good as people make them out to be or not as bad, because a lot of time what you're seeing is the effect of the receivers that they have and the play callers that they have and the schedule that they're playing. So, hey, listen, everybody, I want you to have a great weekend. Keep wearing your mask. Let's get those numbers down so we can have tailgating outside of Sanford Stadium. 50% capacity would be a goal that I would want to see by the end of the year. Who knows, maybe by the time they go to Tuscaloosa on October 17th, wouldn't that be great? So I'm calling it a night. Thanks for joining me here on Friday Night Mike, and I'll be back again on Monday night. Have a great weekend, everybody.